Yeah, got it. So there were 3 items today. One proposed was on the VS Code for modern Fortran, on the C++ and Fortran interoperability by event, but that one will be cancelled and moved to next time. And then one was proposed by John. Welcome, John. I think it's your first time here. And it is about the annual BCS Fortran meeting. So, John, do you want to introduce yourself? Or I don't know you, but maybe others know you. So.
Sure, I'm happy to do so. My day job is I'm head of scientific computing at the Sainsbury Wellcome Centre, which is sort of neuroscience unit. But the reason that I'm here is that I'm chair of the British Computer Society's Fortran specialist group. I think I've been a chair for a few years. The BCS Fortran group has been around since 1970, so it's a very, very long time, not quite as long as Fortran itself. And we have served as a sort of hub for the Fortran community in the UK and Ireland. And we've also acted as a base around which people can talk about requirements for later standards. So we give lots of presentations on an annual basis about what's coming down the line, what technical standards are emerging. Members of our committee, I should say, so we've got John Reed, who was a convener for a long time, and David Muxworthy is also on our committee, who's the core agenda editor, but both on WG5, I should say. So, you know, we've got good credentials, and it's, you know, we've always tried to be open. We're open to any, you know, members of the public can usually come to our meetings off the street if they're interested in Fortran and have any desire to affect the progression of the standard, then they're very welcome to join us either on the day or on our mailing lists. So that's what we do. I mean, we've tried very hard in a sort of old school way of being the community. I mean, this, you know, using Discourse and Zoom is obviously the new model, but you know, I think we represent a fairly open, accepting, you know, community, and have always welcomed people from anywhere. And we have run, you know, prior to you know, Fortran Con, we have run a few conferences in London to get the Fortran community together. And very often, I mean, I used to be a theoretical physicist, so I've brought people from my community and from other communities to give talks about not only Fortran itself, but how do people write code, how do people form teams together, you know, what sort of disciplines and workflows, and sort of all the sort of meta stuff around programming. You know, not just version control, but, you know, how do people resolve conflicts between different methods of programming in smaller teams. So that's basically what we're about, and that's basically why I'm here. So thank you very much. I sort of regret not being here sooner, but I've just had a rather busy time of things, so sorry for that.
It's never too late.
Thanks.
So yeah, welcome on board. Are people? So how can people join it? Just in person, or can they do it online?
So for a while, the BCS has sort of insisted that people be BCS members, but generally you can join online onto our mailing list. What I can do is, I should have actually prepared it, is just, I'll stick up a little web page somewhere and circulate on the Discourse so that people, if they want to, can join. I must say there's probably not a lot of activity outside, you know, our own committee discussions. So most of our activity is centered around the AGM and then presentations on that day. But we always have a hand in something. And in fact, Fortran Con last year, our committee was involved with selecting the talk selection panel. And we will be involved with it this year. In fact, I hear Fortran Con won't be in 2022, but it will be in March 2023. So I heard that today. But I will circulate joining material.
And are there any kind of either irregular or regular voice calls?
No, so I mean that's the thing. We've sort of, because the Fortran standards process has been traditionally quite a slow thing. You know, that's what's dictated our pace. So if there's a lot of standards activity, then we might have more meetings, and if there's less activity, then we'll only have the one meeting a year. We used to have separate AGM and talks, but what we've done is consolidated those because it was easier to manage. But now we're in the era of hybrid. I think we can afford to do many more things, certainly outside the Fortran Con regime. I mean, I'd be quite happy to start organizing, you know, monthly talks and things like that if there's an appetite for it. I guess I should also say that our Fortran specialist group is rebranding into the scientific and engineering computing specialist group. One of the motivations for that is, well, you know, when the Fortran specialist group emerged, it was the only player in town primarily. You know, Fortran was the go-to de facto computational programming language. But now obviously we live in an era of, there's lots of choice. It's not just Python and MATLAB, but there's lots of alternative choice. And so we want to pick up on that and create a home for people, you know, what you might call research software engineers and other people from the commercial world who, you know, want to have a home to discuss computational programming. So yes, thanks.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you, John. So let's look to the Discourse to find the link, and thank you for that. If it's done with that, I propose that we move to the second topic. Giannis?
Sure. I just had a question for John. First of all, very interesting to hear about BCS. I didn't know. I am in the UK, so I'm London-based in Imperial College, and I had no idea that this committee existed. What is the makeup of the members? Are they primarily UK and Ireland based?
Yes, I mean,
yeah,
but that's only the case because that's traditionally what the BCS has served, but now it is much more internationally facing, and also because we meet in the UK, you know, it's tended to filter out other people that need to travel quite far.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, you're very welcome to join. I mean, we've had lots of people from, in fact, we used to have, some of our speakers are from King's and Imperial, so you know, we've definitely had people from that neck of the woods.
Okay, I'll have a look. Awesome, thank you very much.
That's all.
So I think that brings us to VS Code and modern Fortran, which is, first of all, thanks to everyone that helped move things around and migrate the repo to Fortran Lang. It was a slightly slow process, but what I want to discuss today, I guess, is the potential that this unlocks for Fortran Lang and some of the other projects like FPM, SDLib, and probably Fortran, given that we can use it as a test bed to show things to very novice users through Jupyter notebooks, which is something that's very native to VS Code. Or we can integrate FPM directly into the modern Fortran extension. So like people might not necessarily know that we're using it, but they will be using it. Yeah, so I just want to see if that's something that we should pursue. I think the FPM is doable. The Fortran is slightly longer term, in my opinion. My idea was to use it as a linter. So that would be doing mock compilations with Fortran and then serving diagnostics alongside like all the other functionality. Currently, we have iFortran, so like the Intel compilers and GFortran. And I want to add L4 to that. And what was the other thing? And SDLib, I guess it has a lot of utility functions inside that a lot of people are programming, and they basically reinvent the wheel. So I think if we could just give the option to the users when they start a project to install a dlib or a section of it, it'll be good. It'll be interesting, at least, to see how users react. And also, I just want to say we finally passed like 500,000 downloads, which is, yeah, finally. Now that I started spending some time again developing. Yeah. Yeah, how do all these things that I said sound? I guess.
Well, I think it sounds great, but it's not clear. It all depends on the details. So I think we all probably agree we should have a Fortran Lang maintain extension to VS Code to make sure it works, make sure it works with FPM, make sure it kind of just works for end users, so that when you type, you can find definitions, you can find, you can see error messages. So I think we probably all agree on that. Now the question is how to do that. So, for example, so there is FortLS that can serve as the backend, right? That's what you develop, Yanis. And then there is G4.
The language server. So like the language server is an addition to the VS Code extension. It gives a lot of the higher level functionality, but you can function without it. So it's not mandatory. But yeah, okay.
So so let's brainstorm it. So if we do it without it, what else can the extension do?
So it has hovering, but it's only for intrinsics, which is like we have to download basically everything that is in Fortran, or like on the documentation, we download it and we display it through something similar than a language server, but only for hover. We have some very basic autocomplete, which is basic because it's easy to implement an autocomplete in TypeScript, but not a good one. Okay, we have the syntax highlighting, which is, to the best of my knowledge, some of the most complete highlighting that out there, with like for the edge cases at least. What else? And the linter, which is like it calls Fortran or iFort and parses the one more thing, and then it parses that diagnostics of the compiler into VS Code, into the locations of the code, so like a good integration with compilers. And the last bit is formatting.
So how does the formatting work? What does it?
So you register a formatter, and we allow the users to either install fPrettify, which is an independent project, or fintend, which I maintain the PyPy wrapper. And yeah, so basically you call the binary from the command line, and then you parse the buffers, the IO buffers into VS Code, which is, I think, the most robust way of doing this.
So I would say, as a user, what I would like is definitely be able to use multiple compilers through the extension and be able to select the compiler and see the error messages as part of VS Code. And so the current Fortran integration, is it robust? Does it work solid?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Well then,
but it doesn't build. It does linting, but it doesn't build. So like I haven't gone around, and so that was a limitation from Microsoft's side, but now it's been fixed, and I've been lazy on my end. So we don't have integration with CMake, and
well, I would use FPM for that, and figure out how we can use FPM to drive the compiler and then give back the error messages. And that might,
yeah. So the error messages are simple because it's just a flag. So it's the F syntax only. So which does a mock compilation. So effectively, you can use all your other compiler options that you've passed, and it makes things easier. And you just include that flag with anything else that you want to pass to the linter, anything else you want to override. You need your compiler to have that though, which I don't think flang has. I'm not entirely sure. I tried implementing that, but it didn't work. Yeah, so I think the linting is it's a nice to have feature, since you make sure like you can check for compilation errors before you actually compile, but there are things missing. like building is missing.
Yeah,
As it-
I had a question about the linting. How does it handle dependencies between source files? Like if module B uses module A, how does it can't, I mean, compile it even it, but I'm curious does it just ignore things from the other module when it's doing the syntax only?
I have no idea. Yeah, I know it works. So it's that is dependent on the on the compiler. So like I think it's the middle end or back end of Fortran that handles these things. So I have no idea what they're doing with their ASD.
Okay.
Yeah, but it does produce mod files. So like you have to be careful not to mix the linting mod files that get produced with your actual mod files of your project. So like you throw them somewhere else by default. Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that kind of fragile? It seems to me that it will break on bigger projects, or is the linting very robust and always works?
I think it's very robust. It hasn't faced since we fixed. So you need to include directories. That is basically it. You just need to be able to find your include files, and you can use regular expressions, so you don't have to go and manually include every single thing, which you would do normally in a CMake file, in CMake or make files. Yeah, so other than that, it's fine. So like for my projects, which like for our radiation transport codes and our CFD stuff, they're pretty big and legacy codes as well. So it works. Like I haven't seen it break for over 2 years.
But does it find all the error messages or just some?
Like that brings us to what does the compiler do when you give it F syntax, like when you just do syntax checking. Well, if you have multiple fatal errors in your code, the compiler will abort in the first one, right? It's not going to compile the rest. So it will find the first one. You'll fix the first one and will find the next one. That's not the majority of the cases. It will find everything. But if you have some horrible thing that breaks the syntax and it aborts the mock compilation, yeah, it will just fetch whatever the compiler gives you.
No, what I meant is, well, I guess maybe I don't understand. So if you have modules, you import the function from a module, you use the function incorrectly with incorrect arguments or types.
Yeah.
How does the linter check it if it doesn't have access to the other module?
So it does. So it will compile effectively, but it's not a real compilation. And that's the thing. So like F syntax, if you check, let me pull up the documentation for F syntax. It will produce mod files. You can't use them for actual compilation, but they do contain the optimized AST information.
Right, but if I haven't compiled the other module and I'm just opening this one, it doesn't have a mod file.
It will go and do the compilation for the other module as well.
How does it know where to find it?
It's you've given your compile option, like you given your where to search for source files, right? You can include directories.
Or what if it's in FPM and another dependency?
Well, that's not gonna work. If it's not in your source tree, if you don't have the actual source code.
No, you have the source code, but FPM stores the source code elsewhere in the different directories.
Yeah, it's fine. You can include the directory, right?
Okay.
You will include. I from the top of my head, because I'm not entirely sure about this. I might have changed it, but it would find all the mod files. It has the default behavior of Fortran, which is any mod file in your current directory is included. So you will search for symbols information in these mod files. And then any additional arguments you pass to the compiler, which we expose through a flag, then it's going to search for those things. So if you give all the directories where your source code is located, or you're just mod files, not even actual source code, just compiled modules, it will search for these things. and it will include them in during the syntax checking of your module. Okay, let me find the syntax.
Janice,
That-
if you'd like to share screen to show things, you're welcome to.
Yeah, give me a second. It's like my desktop's a
No worries.
mess.
So my experience for the C++ at least extension to VS Code is that I always just give up on setting up these paths, because I don't have the time to, when I open the project, I don't have the time and I don't want to set anything. I want things to just work. And if they don't work, I just kind of ignore it. I don't have the time. What I would like as a user from the Fortran extension is if the project uses FPM, which is something I know we can do, it should just work. You should not need to set any kind of paths, and it should just, and the error messages that the linting should be just like compilation, so that if you don't get any lint errors, then your project will compile. That's what I would like as a user. And I think to get there, it might not be that complicated, because I think FPM knows all the paths where things will be. And if you are saying that the Fortran extension, the linting mode, works by giving it the paths, I think that should be doable.
Yeah, exactly. So that is why I'm eager to get FPM and like at least to have the functionality to build with FPM or to use FPM. And I think I opened an issue, like I asked a question on GitHub about using PyPy wheels. So like you installing FPM with PyPy, because it's going to be a massive pain if we have to use Anaconda. We can with VS Code. It's just going to be, we will have to build a lot of things that I haven't gotten around to doing, such as initializing Anaconda environments.
That seems like a good use case for PyPy.
Yeah, because we prompt the user to install everything through PyPy. The formatters, Fortran, all of it is handled through PyPy because it's relatively lightweight. So yeah, I think that's it. FPM seems to be the easiest to do. And as for, I mean, the linter works perfectly fine. The only caveat is exactly what you said. You need to set up some paths. Things become substantially easier if you can use global expressions, which you can. But same with the Fortran language server, you have to set up your configure, and that is a slight. It's the thing that most users don't know how to do. So if your things can just work out of the box, that'll be great.
Yeah, I think we all agree that should be the goal, that users just click on Fortran Lang VS Code extension, they don't download it, and either there need to be clear instructions how to install a Fortran compiler, or you already have it or whatever, but they should not need to do any kind of config files or anything. And if your project uses FPM, things should just work, I think. Yeah, anyway, but to answer your question, is this worth it? I think absolutely. I think we all want this.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, sounds good. Any other comments? Otherwise, I think that you open an issue on a FPM GitHub, right?
Yeah.
I do have a comment. So how does your FortLS? So FortLS is a project in Python that Yanis wrote for effectively serving as a language server. How does it relate to that Fortran linting mode?
So they're complementary. So the FortLS can serve diagnostics, but obviously they're solving the same problem, but a language server usually is limited by its parser because you have to make sacrifices. So FortLS can serve only limited diagnostics because its parser is not meant to fully create an AST tree and check for validity. To supplement that, you use an actual compiler and you do a mock compilation. The reason why it's difficult to have a language server use parsers that compilers use is because the server parsers need to be sorry, I got stuck. They need to be resilient to errors. So they need to not be breaking while you're typing and performing autocomplete actions where a compiler would just throw errors after errors. Your language server parser needs to be able to handle that with gracefully. Yes, I think, what is it? It's not TypeScript or JavaScript. It's one of these languages that Microsoft had to write language servers, PHP. Yeah, they rewrote the parser because their actual parser could not do the job. So yeah, it might be a problem for that might be a problem, Anders, for the Fortran stuff, but like, and the language server.
If you remember, you and I discussed that over video some time ago, and I think we agreed that Fortran can do the same thing, which is you just maintain the last version that worked, and you use that as the user types. You compile, but if there's an error, you use the old semantically working version to look up things, and then the minute the new version starts working again, you update the state. And and in a way, it's almost the same as, so I looked up how C# does that, and indeed their parser can parse your code with errors, and they insert kind of an error node in the AST, and then they use that whole AST to do the semantics. But it seems to me it's almost the same as using the last state, because typically you enter a new line, you start typing. So yes, that line will have some information that's not part of the old semantic representation that you use to look up things, but typically it should almost always work to look up the function that you are typing for tab completion or arguments and stuff like that.
Yeah, the only problem might be that all of this is usually asynchronous. So keeping track of these changes might be a bit harder other than actually inserting nodes to your AST3 and then synchronizing everything. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, if it doesn't work, I think we'll see what happens, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work. Okay, that's me.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah, then if it's done for this topic, thank you for the contribution. And then Andre proposed another topic in the chat, which is about, I don't remember. Andre, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm here. I proposed another topic, which is to discuss the enumeration this proposal to the committee. I can share my screen so that we can look at that. Just clean up things here. So let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Share a screen. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So it's the issue that I opened up on the, oh, it's the wrong issue. It's the J3 Fortran proposals issues. I think it's the enumeration issue. Yes, it's a pull request, I think. Scoped enough. All right. So the discussion started on Fortran discourse, and it's about the enumerations that are part of that they got approved by the committee to be included in 20X, which is 2023 standard. So in 2 years roughly, or 1 year from now. And the issue there is that those enumerators are global. And so this proposal from Peter Hill proposes to make them local, such as, well, you should read it. I recommend to read the proposal, but, he goes into the details why, and, pretty thorough, background investigation and so on. This is the proposed syntax, and the current approved feature for 20X is that these white, brown, and green enumerators are global. So you cannot, for example, import, well, you have to rename them if you want to use both, for example. And the proposal goes into, the background and so on. And so there is a discussion about this, and I encourage you to read it. I'm happy to summarize it, but I guess I wanted to bring it up and see if any of you have any opinions on this.
So I agree that the enumeration type that J3 passed has some problems, but I don't think that this solves enough of them.
Yeah, so this was addressed by a comment here. Let's see. I have to find, there it is. So this is Peter Hill, that the guy who wrote it. So he says that the missing features that one would want from an enumeration is the proper scope, exhaustive select case, custom values, underlying custom types, as well as the custom underlying type, as well as IO. I guess working with IO. And I think your argument is that this only addresses the proper scope, but doesn't address the other issues.
Correct.
And so there was also Vipul's argument that he says that he recommended to rather send a proposal saying we should take the current feature out and rather wait until we propose the full feature. And it's an argument. And Peter's argument is that instead, why don't we take what's already approved and just add the proper scope? Because if we can fix that now, then all of the other ones seems to be possible to add them in a backwards compatible manner.
Okay.
But if we don't fix this now, then I don't think we can fix the scope later, or not in a backwards compatible manner, at least.
Did the one that passed have usage in select case as a feature?
I don't know.
That's the question. Is because we can't enforce exhaustive select case if you're already allowed to put them in a select case, because as soon as this goes into a standard, that would be breaking existing programs.
So if the exhaustive select case is not part of it, why can you explain why it would break the standard to add it later?
So if I am currently allowed to put the new enumeration type in a select case construct in a way that doesn't have exhaustive matching, right? So I've got colors red, green, blue, and I have a select case that only includes red.
Yes,
That's
let's
not
say
exhaustive.
brown,
And if
yeah.
I later say, oh, you must have exhaustive select case, well, now this code that was previously standards conforming is now broken.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It would have to be added as a warning, I guess, not a hard error, or it would have to be a compiler extension. Yeah, to kind of be more restrictive for
Right,
codes
yeah.
that allow it.
Yeah, at that point, the standard couldn't say anything about exhaustive
Correct.
matching.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. Okay. Good point. Yeah. That you're right about that. So that would be one thing to maybe possibly add.
So we need to either address all of the things that we wouldn't be able to add later in a backwards compatible manner.
In fact, he says it. So Peter is very good. He actually really
Yeah.
is solid with this analysis. He actually even says it. Yes, you are right. The
Yeah.
first two to be done now.
Yeah. So we have to either do both of those now or not put the feature in for 2023.
Okay, I think you are right about this, and I agree.
And I would lean towards not putting the feature in for 2023 because I don't see how much it adds beyond the already existing bind C enums, because we also added types for those. So I don't see what the distinguishing feature is between this new enumeration type.
I think the distinguishing feature is that you can use it as Fortran and not having to put bind C. That's the main, I think, motivation there.
Well, that doesn't buy you anything, though, because
It doesn't,
just because
but-
it says bind C doesn't mean you have to use it with C.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think it buys you anything that much. Well, any other comments? I mean, we have a nice opportunity to discuss this, or I would be interested in what you think, or if it's not that important.
Oh, that last bullet point there, the current spec has that reflection with next and previous and enum type 1, huge enum type. Like, I think those kinds of features actually really do prevent custom values and custom underlying types later.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the way I see this feature is what I kind of noticed when I joined the committee, which is that I think we have to have a prior implementation in a compiler and implement the feature fully as full. So in this case, I would do all let's say we want all these 6 or 5 points, let's say, then I would implement all 5 points and then see, and you immediately are forced to design some solution for the next and previous and how this all works all together, and really have to sit down and pretty much figure it out and then use it and see, do we like it? And only then, if we like it and having some experimental feature in a compiler, use it. And if we do like it and say, this is really cool, this really helps, then it's time to standardize it, and not doing it like we do now, that we effectively, what you identified here, I think it gets very complicated very quickly. That's kind of my feeling. And so I think maybe the motivation for the current solution is that it's something that we can actually standardize without breaking too much or anything, perhaps. But it does seem to prevent adding more features later, because we make some choices now and then it prevents the features later. And that's, in fact, seems to me, that's been my kind of subjective experience with the committee, is that the committee is very good about, it tries absolute the best not to break things, and that's good. But that kind of inevitably forces it to just do features on a small step, because to ensure that nothing breaks, and that in turn possibly prevents adding the bigger picture later, because it needs to be done at once. You cannot do it step by step, because you prevent things.
Well, I think the committee is hesitant to say, oh, we ran into a complication that we didn't foresee in implementing the small feature, and we would rather make a choice now than delay the feature.
Yes, exactly. I don't have the link
here. I think that's exactly what happened with the arguments that we had over next and previous for this new type. Was the argument was, well, what should happen if you ask for the next enumerator if this is the last enumerator? And if I recall, the answer was, well, you keep returning the last enumerator, which is a weird behavior.
I wish I could find the enum. It's somewhere in here, but I don't know where there it is. This is the original thread for people to know where it's coming from. I should probably link it to that issue. It started just last week, and there's a lot of discussion around this. And one thing that you got reminded me, I posted to Fortran fan somewhere here. Long time ago, I created a thread about kind of a general thread about things to keep in mind when adding any new feature to the language, and I added some kind of course, and there is a discussion coming. And one of them is the one we are discussing today is here. The feature might block a better feature to be put in later, and that's something that I think the committee maybe is not putting enough priority to, by adding these smaller features that are done in kind of a way that doesn't break things.
Well, it was done in kind of an ad hoc way of like, this was a feature that we'd like to go along with this. Here's how I think we can do it. Oh, there's a complication. Let's just ad hoc decide something rather than reevaluate whether this all fits together nicely.
Yeah, either ad hoc decide something, or let's get rid of the complicated things like custom types or maybe values and things like that, so that things become manageable, except that by making the choice
Did we lost
Yeah,
Andre?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if it was just me or,
No, it sounds like it's, yeah, Andre, we've lost him.
okay,
Well,
Okay.
I shouldn't say lost him, but the bit rate has dramatically dropped.
Discussion
Yeah.
is about the
We lost most of him.
last one. But there should be well, are defined some X. In some ways, it's a bit, you don't have namespaces. It's addition. Any other comments?
I have a question. Okay, first a comment before the question, why I don't have any comments. So I'm not experienced enough with this to provide valuable feedback. I really only understand the argument for for the scoping. That makes
Mhm.
sense to me and it's clear. The others, okay, maybe I can understand the gist of it, but not really well enough. Anyhow, I'm not a user of enumerations. I probably won't be, but I trust all of you here and also the people working on the proposal for revisions. My question is it a good or bad idea to post the discussion and the proposal draft on the mailing lists, WJ5 and J3? Is it too soon? I was thinking it may be good to give more time for people to think about it rather than throw it at them the day before the meeting.
the
But at
sooner
the
you
same
can,
time, we don't want to put out something that's not clear and cogent and that has gaps.
Mhm. I think the sooner you can put something in front of the committee, the more likely they are to be receptive to talking about it at the meeting. That would be my 2 cents.
My sense is that it's going to require a paper well before the meeting where we summarize the issues. It does, quickly looking through the J3 papers, select case was added. These enumerations were added to select case. There is no, I don't believe there is any language in select case about the cases being exhaustive in the other cases in which select case is used. So to Andre's and to Brad's point, if we want to do the right thing over the long haul, we can't do the wrong thing first.
Mhm.
And I haven't dug into this as much as I really should. It's part of an ongoing project I've got, but I'm not making the progress on it I want. But I probably have similar concerns about the polluting of the global namespace and in a way that you can't extend in the future.
Mhm.
Oh, for those of you playing at home, the last paper I see that mentions select case and enumerations is 21-189 R2.
And that did not make it to the standard?
It passed.
Oh, so it passed.
Yeah.
Andre, it doesn't work again.
I think we lost Andre again.
here.
It's almost worth sampling.
Could be my new soundtrack.
2019, and to have those local we kind of change them. Yes.
Andre,
We missed all of that again, Andre.
Yeah. No,
Bye.
That's the end of the buffer.
we lost him again.
Okay, was there any decision or action item or something that we wanted to come out of the meeting on this topic?
Well, I just want people to get involved.
Right.
And if you all agree, then we should do something. If you think that, you know, either we don't agree or, you know, then we can just kind of let things go. But so I encourage all of you to read it, and if you agree, comment there. And then if it seems that we are all in favor of making some improvements to this so that we can later implement the full feature, then I suggest we write up a paper and get it in front of the committee as soon as possible so that we can have enough time to actually change this and fix it.
Mhm.
Yeah, good. It sounds a good plan. Yeah, there are no other item on the agenda, so I think we are finished. Any other final item to add quickly? No. Good. So yeah, I think that we can close the meeting. Thank you all to join this meeting, and we'll see each other in 1 month. Good.
Thank
Awesome.
you all.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
See ya.
Pleasure. Bye.